Hello, everyone. This is Kevin from The Kevin Lee Show, and welcome once again to another blog post offering on my podcast. Today's episode is going to be entitled, Skepticism is King. But I just want to remind everyone that if you're ever interested in reading any of these blogs, they can be found at medium.com/@Kevin from The Kevin Lee Show, or you can go directly onto my website, thekevinleeshow.com, and click on the upper right-hand corner where it says blog, and it'll take you directly there. So without further ado, let's get to the podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it might be, wherever you may be.
Welcome to The Kevin Lee Show. Skepticism is king. Sometimes, to be a true believer in something, anything for that matter, is a good thing. And sometimes, to be a non-believer is a good thing. But being a skeptic is always a good thing. Here's why. On either side of any issue, there is room for doubt. Arguably at times only a little room, but room nonetheless. For example, take climate change, formerly known as global warming. Before that, global cooling, etc., etc. I shouldn't have to go on further here, but I will. You see, depending upon which set of offered facts that you choose to believe, it's easy to say that either climate change is a real threat and that our world is in desperate shape, or that climate change is made up by pessimistic progressives just trying to control our lives and that the proposed evidence is either not accurate or at the very least is completely blown out of proportion. Simply put, there are facts that can support both sides of this argument, and, like I mentioned before, any argument. So, who do you believe? Which side do you take? Is anything ever true or provable? This is where skepticism comes in. The definition of a skeptic is a person inclined to question or doubt accepted opinions. Period. Nothing more, nothing less. In other words, a person willing to question the status quo when it doesn't quite sit well with them. So what's wrong with that? Nothing. Unless, of course, you're hell-bent on forcing everyone around you to accept your opinion as fact at all costs. Then, in such instances, a skeptic is your worst enemy. Why? Because your opponent, the one who actually takes the opposite stance as you, is easy to vilify. They are wrong and misinformed, they are uneducated or undereducated, or just flat-out stupid. But a skeptic is not taking an antithetical stand, but rather simply questioning your argument, or, even worse, part of your argument. When that happens, if you're proven wrong, even if only partially, this can unravel your entire viewpoint and the cause for which you have worked so hard for. That's why. In other words, your enemy is your enemy, but a skeptic could be a friend or a foe and potentially your downfall. They can and should scare anyone, regardless of who you are, whichever cause you believe in and whichever side you find yourself on in any debate. Skeptics are not bad, but they are dangerous. Now, does this mean that skeptics are the enemy of all and that whenever you see a skeptic coming, you should either hunker down and prepare for a fight or turn tail and run? Of course not. If a skeptic is a true skeptic and you have all the facts needed to back up your claim, then you should welcome them with open arms because all they are truly looking for are answers to their questions and doubts. If they are really a skeptic and you have the evidence they seek, then not only can you put their concerns to rest, but you might even possibly be able to win them over to your side. That said, before moving forward, I need to take a second to point out the 600-pound gorilla in the room. In the previous paragraph, I mentioned not only true skeptic, but also being a real skeptic. Why? Because not everyone you encounter who either carries themselves as or claims to be is a skeptic, but rather just an opponent in sheep's clothing. This distinction is not always easily discernible, but there are ways that you can tell. For instance, when an alleged skeptic makes a counterpoint, do they do so calmly or are they overrun with emotion? This is not the only way that you can expose them, but it's a pretty good litmus test. Now, back to our regularly scheduled article. I must warn you, many skeptics are talented at their craft, and when their doubt radar goes off, they are usually prepared for battle. The end result could look one of three ways. 1. You win. I doubt it, but anything is possible. 2. They win and completely blow your argument up, leaving nothing for you to cling to. More probable than the previous option. Or 3. You survive the encounter, but they poke some holes in your bulletproof presentation. This is the most likely outcome of all three options. Now, with that said, losing a debate of this nature is not necessarily a bad thing to happen. You see, if someone is able to destroy your viewpoint, that might just show you that you were wrong in the first place and that this person has just saved you from further embarrassment. And if you were able to regroup and lick your wounds after the battle, that means that you still have a leg to stand on, and though your weaknesses have been exposed, you've learned where your case seems to be lacking, allowing you the opportunity to improve your defense going forward. Finally, does this mean that once a skeptic, always a skeptic? Yes, but it's not that simple. Yes, they will always be a skeptic, generally speaking, but that's not to say that skeptics don't ever choose sides or that they don't ever change their minds, because they do. Their opinions usually follow the facts of the case, and their doubt radar usually only goes off when something doesn't sit right with them. Ultimately, skeptics don't walk around looking for a fight. Furthermore, I believe it can be argued that not many debates would ever have been settled without skepticism. Sure, the fully proven and strong argument doesn't need skepticism, and same goes for the opposite, easily disproven and weak arguments. But for the middle of the road, the long, drag-out, beat-down debates that seem to go on forever and ever, those could never be settled without a little skepticism interjected to force one side or the other to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt and settle something once and for all. Well, at least as closely as we can get. For now. In closing, what should be understood about skeptics is that a skeptic is only a skeptic of something when there's something to be skeptical about. Thanks for reading and listening, Kevin. So, there you have it. Number 3 blog post in the book. I hope you enjoyed it, and remember you can always read these blogs at medium.com/A Kevin from the Kevin Lee Show, or you can go onto my website, thekevinleeshow.com, and click on blog in the upper right-hand corner. And of course, you can always listen to these podcasts and much, much more at iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spreaker at The Kevin Lee Show. Thanks for listening.